Hi, and welcome back to AI in 5. I'm your host, Simon Chris, and joining me today is Kate Bauer. Kate is a consumer advocate specialist, particularly around the area of AI. And so we're going to have a chat about what consumers expect from AI deployments. Hi, Kate, and welcome to AI in 5. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, Simon. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great, thank you. We better get straight into it. We've only got 5 minutes.
Let's do it.
Your work in consumer advocacy, particularly around AI, is really important. What are you seeing right now? What are consumers' concerns? What are they asking about AI?
Well, I think the first thing to think about consumers is consumers like not a special interest group, right? They're you, they're me, they're everybody listening to this call. So their expectations are things that we know. What do we don't like? Don't like it when we get lied to. We don't
Yep.
like it when we get misled. We don't like it when we get ripped off. When we buy a product or we sign up to a service, we want it to do what it says it does. If someone's making a decision about me, we want that decision to be fair. We want the information the decision's based on to be accurate, to be reliable. So I think, when we think about consumers' expectations of AI, we don't have to kind of think of some kind of like complicated, well, what is AI? What is this? The expectations are the same as they are for everything else. We just don't want to get ripped off and we want to buy products that are safe.
Yeah. Okay. Do you see any legislation or anything that's heading that way to try and protect people? The EU's got its AI Act and things like that. Australia's in discussion, but where are we really?
So I think I've said it's actually really simple, but actually it can be a little bit more complicated when we come down to like what is the legislative settings and regulatory design we need to be able to achieve that.
Mm,
There are some interesting things about AI in its difference from other types of products is that it's whole of economy and it's whole of government. So it can potentially be used in any type of product or service. People right now will be using AI when they log into Netflix or they listen to something
yep.
on Spotify. That's a recommender algorithm. People are very familiar with the type of AI that creates a search algorithm in Google or Bing or whatever their preferred search engine is. That's without even the generative AI overlay that we're starting to see appear. So actually AI has been around for a really long time. So how to define a piece of legislation around something that is in everything and everywhere is kind of an impossible task. So I think instead what we need to focus on are those expectations of consumers are how do we make sure that something's fair? How do we make sure that something is reliable? How do we make sure that decisions about us are made in a transparent way where we can
Mm,
question those decisions? So in that sense, I do think we need to focus more on, I guess, like what we call the pointy end. So I don't think two people are necessarily too concerned with how search operates or maybe how their Netflix queue gets created. I think probably there's some big scale economic questions about recommender systems, but in terms of what consumers' expectations are, they want to know that there are systems in place that make sure that those expectations are met. So at Choice, we actually did some research for World Consumer Rights Day earlier this year in
okay.
March. We asked consumers what they thought about certain types of legislation. And they do think, so this will be a really interesting one for people listening in business, is they do think that government should require, so make it mandatory for businesses to be able to assess and make sure that their product is safe before it hits the market. And
Yeah.
also interesting to this is that they also support a third party and so like an independent regulator or an independent assessment system to ensure that those risks have been mitigated before the product hits the market.
Wow. Yeah, that'd
So
be that would be huge. I get it, but that would be huge.
that would be huge. So, I mean, I think realistically, we can think about what kinds of regulations do we currently have in place. So, for example, we've got an Anti-Discrimination Act, we've got privacy law, even though I'm hoping to see that gets uplifted
Yep.
in the next little while. But we do have laws in place that apply to certain applications of AI. But one thing is interesting about those laws, and we also have the Australian consumer law that says that products should be of acceptable quality.
Yep.
is that many of these types of regulations are enforced by regulators, what we call ex post. So that's after the product has hit the market and a consumer has an issue with it. So
Yep.
I think what the difference we need to see here is with AI is that we actually need to start thinking more about that pre-market phase and pre-market regulation rather than just waiting until something goes wrong and then I put in
Mm.
a complaint to the privacy regulator or I put in a complaint to the ACCC and then they do something about it.
Okay. In the meantime, though, and we're almost at time, but in the meantime, though, what can organizations do to help this along? I mean, I'm a big exponent of, as has just come out in a directive from the government that the government departments have to do this, the companies could publish like a transparency document about we're using AI and this is how we use it. Is there other things that companies could be doing?
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start. There are certainly plenty of tools available online. There are certainly an increasing number of standards coming out either through ISO or through NIST, Standards Australia, where people can look at risk management frameworks which have transparency and accountability mechanisms. But I think, as you and I would know, AI starts with the data.
Mm.
So if you've got data inside your business, having good data controls, just knowing what data you have, are you meeting all of your privacy obligations? Are you treating that data in the correct way? Will go a long way to helping you then to be able to get proper transparency and accountability for use of AI. And the second thing is that most AI is actually bought through third-party suppliers.
Yes.
So yes, your procurement strategy is another thing that you're looking at. So if you want to start today, the two things I'd suggest is one is look at your data, two is look at your procurement strategy.
Yeah, great advice. Absolutely great advice. Thank you. This has been an awesome AI in 5. Before you go, though, I always love to ask everybody what would be your one tip, your best little bit of advice for someone just starting their AI journey, either personally or business? What's your great tip?
I think my tip would be to read widely. There's a huge diversity of voices talking about AI, so don't get stuck too much in one narrow stream. If your interest is, say, content marketing, don't just read content marketers' views on AI. Make sure that you read across the spectrum. There's lots of fantastic experts out there, and I think that enables you to have a good diversity of viewpoints and a good skepticism too about what you're
Yeah.
using and learning.
Yeah, lots of experts, including yourself, Kate. And if people listening to this aren't following you on LinkedIn, then they're really missing out because you have some great content. Thanks for being on the show. I look forward to chatting again with you soon.
Thanks for having me.